What's going on, nerds? I'm Wes, and if there's one thing that I love to nerd out about, it's time travel. So we've already covered the first two games in this series from Underdog Games, which were Trekking the National Parks and Trekking the World. You can find both those video links down in the description box below. So what we have here is Trekking Through History, which is coming to Kickstarter. So of course we have to start off with the quick caveat that what you see before us is a prototype. It's a beautiful prototype, but some things may change. There may be some minor tweaks, so this definitely isn't a video on how to play or to give you the very specifics, but I did definitely get a taste of it to be able to talk to you about what this game provides and why you should be backing it on Kickstarter. So, as with all of the trekking games, this definitely fits into the intro level, really easy to teach, but still fun for all gamers to play. And it definitely combines a few great mechanics into the game. So on your turn, you are going to be drawing a card, you're going to be moving along the time track, collecting your resources, and then checking for points. So really quick and easy turn. Really the only choice that you really make is which card you're going to take, but there's definitely some strategy to that. So the way it works is you are trying to collect sets of cards chronologically. So starting as far back as you can, that's how you begin your trek, and then every turn you take a card that is hopefully later along the timeline. So you start way back in BCE, which is before Common Era, working your way all the way up into present day. And now you can take a card that doesn't fall into that. Like if you want a card specifically that doesn't fall after your most recent card, you can take that, but you're starting a new trek. So you put that trek together, set it off to the side, and start your new trek. And you score victory points at the end of the game based on how long you can get your trek to be. Starting at negative points if you only have one card in that trek, going all the way up to 30 points or 30 points plus if you get tons of cards in your trek. Now, the other thing that you have to look at while you are collecting these cards, well, there's two things to look at really. One is cards give you resources, which are over here. There's both these experiences, you get different amounts of experience, as well as time tokens. And you use these tokens down on these individual player mats, and you get a selection of them, and you get to choose which one you want to use. And basically, it's an additional way to score victory points and get time tokens. As you fill those cards up, you either cover symbols up that give you the time tokens or points, or if you get certain rows horizontally, then that can also unlock extra victory points for you. I'll get to time tokens in just a second. The next thing that you're going to look at on the card is the time that it takes. So times can range all the way from 1 to 5, possibly more than that. I saw up to 5s available in the prototype. And that is what this board over here is. So this is your time board. And this is also the turn tracker. So however many time that card is worth, you move that many spaces forward on the time tracker. So this card is worth 3 time. So if you select it, you're going to move 3 spaces forward on the time tracker. So there are two things that you really need to know about the time tracker. One is that each day is a total of 12 slots. So as you're going through that day, you can get up to 12, and as soon as you get to or cross 12 on the time tracker, you are done for that day. You wait for everyone else to finish their day. So hypothetically, if you get 2 5s and a 2, well, that's only 3 cards, and you're at 12, you're done. And somebody else may get 6, 7 cards, maybe up to 10 in that same day. So you definitely want to pace yourself and really take those high cards when it's really important for you. The other thing the time tracker does is it keeps track of turn order. And this is a mechanic that I really, really appreciate in a game. And that's whoever is the farthest most back on the time tracker goes next. So right here we have blue is farthest back. Now if blue takes a card that is 1 time, it moves forward 1 space, takes the rest of their turn, and now you go back to the time tracker and blue is still the farthest back. Blue gets to go again. And so it really does incentivize you to get those low point cards. because you want to have as many turns as possible so you can get as many cards as possible so you can get as many points as possible. That seems pretty straightforward. So it's a struggle to see who can stay in the back as much as possible. Definitely times where it's worth it for you to jump ahead of the pack to get that card that's just right. Maybe it's taking you from 10 points to 15 points on your trek, or maybe it's those resources that you need to score like 30 points on your individual player mat. But I love those choices because it's so simple. It's such a simple, like, do you want to move forward 1 space or 3 spaces? But there's definitely tons of strategy involved in that choice. Now, I told you I was going to come back to the time crystals, and the reason that these are important is because you can spend these crystals to reduce the time of a card to a minimum of 1. So maybe you do really want that card that has 5 time on it. If you spend 4 crystals, it's only 1 time. So these crystals are definitely like, you want to use them at just the right moments to get the perfect cards for your play, and maybe keep yourself back. Maybe if you manage to get really far back on the track and you get tons of time crystals, then you could spend a ton of those crystals back to back, but take multiple turns in a row. And because of the way that these cards are organized, and you want to always get like the next chronological card, well, maybe you have a bunch of cards that are way back in the past and only a handful of cards that are in the future. Well, everybody's going to be going for those future cards because there aren't many of them, so you're vying over them, because there may come a turn where you don't have an option but to begin a new trek. And you may be at a point where that's fine because you've got a decent amount of points in your trek, but you may also just be locked up with a bunch of cards that are, really early in history, especially in a higher player game. So using those the time crystals, like, very tactically, will help you have first choice and make sure that you get exactly the cards that you want in the game. And that's the basic mechanics of a day in this game. And again, the day ends once everyone gets to or past the 12. You get bonus points if you land right on 12. But if you do bust, there's not like a penalty for it. You just don't get the bonus points, which again makes this game really like friendly to new players. There's not a lot of punishments. Like, there's the one way to get negative points if you only have 1 card in your trek, but honestly, I've never seen that come up where you only get 1 card. It's more of like an incentivization not to do something really dumb, not to like, oh, I started my trek, oh, I really want that card, I'll just burn this trek and get that one. Like, that's the only consequence in the game, which again makes it very accessible and really nice to teach new people. You do play a total of 3 days in the game, and there are different decks for each day. I've got day 3 is over here, day 1 is over here, day 2 is on the board. And this just helps mix up the events. It helps make sure that there's a good balance of time in each deck. You don't get all of 1980s to 1990s in the top 30 cards of the deck, so you really can't get good treks. This helps disperse the decks through. It helps keep the artwork fresh, helps the game be variable game to game. It's really well done how they laid that out. But yeah, you play day 1, day 2, day 3. On each new day, again, you have a new deck. You get a new individual player mat to get more points, and you keep your time crystals. You can't have treks go multiple days. Like at the end of 12, like you're done with that, like with those treks, whatever trek you're on, when you get to the end of the day, it's done. And that, again, that's basically the game. You play the 3 rounds, then you count up victory points, and points in the game are all based on your individual player mats, which will move these tokens up through the game. And then at the end of day 3, you'll count up all your treks and add those on as well. So really easy to teach because there's only a few mechanics in the game, but they play together really nicely. You've got your cards with resource collection and time on them. You've got your turn order mechanics over here, which so good. And then you have your individual player mats, which realistically is just like you're trying to get these resources to cover tokens up. And as you cover things up on the board, you get victory points and time tokens. Super easy to teach, super fun to play. Really accessible, beautiful artwork. Honestly, like all the artwork on the time cards, and each of these times is an event as well. That's one of the things that Underdog Games really likes to put into these trekking games, is you get to learn while you play. So like I could definitely see like homeschoolers or school or whatever like using this as a teaching tool, because on the back of each of these things, like on the front has a date, it has an event at the top, and the back of the card tells you more about that event and that time and that location. So you really can learn a ton playing this game if you are diving in and digging into that information. So guys, if this sounds like a game that you want to back, it is going to be on Kickstarter. There will be a link down in the description box below, as well as the links to our other reviews of the trekking games. Definitely recommend that you check that out, see all the awesome things that Underdog is bringing to the game table. Speaking of game tables, we're very happy to thank our sponsor, Game Toppers, for providing us with these awesome game toppers, as well as being the biggest sponsor of our channel. Either way, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you'll never be bored.